Okay, welcome everybody. I just want to introduce a special guest. We have Coach Sean McAneny. He is the head coach of Lenape High School girls basketball, and he's going to be talking to us about his program, about his history. We'll start with his family, but just want to welcome him to the program. So how you doing, Coach?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me, Mike. It's an honor to be on here, and I just wanted to thank you for all you do for girls basketball in South Jersey. I think this is such a cool atmosphere and a cool community you've created. These podcasts have been a lot of fun to listen to. I really just love listening to what the other coaches and other players have to say, and just being a part of that community now is a really cool feeling.
Well, I do wish you, lots of success and luck. Hopefully,
thank you.
This is the start of a long career, a successful career, and
I hope so too.
Celebrating some milestones. Coach Miles in Delran, he just hit 400. Coach Patrick hit 500. So I'm looking forward to celebrating some of your milestones as you go forward. So why don't you tell us about your background? Where'd you grow up?
So I'm originally from Edgewater Park. I grew up there playing soccer and basketball my whole life. I am the oldest of three very competitive, very athletic children. I was probably the worst athlete in the family, to be honest with you. I have a younger sister who played field hockey and lacrosse, and a younger brother who played soccer. And everything we did growing up was some kind of game, some kind of competition. And I think that always just kind of pushed us towards sports more and more. We just love competing. You love that going up against somebody else, trying to prove you're better or trying to prove that you're good at something. And that just drove me through sports my whole life and all the way up into coaching.
So what sports did you play growing up? What did you enjoy playing?
My two main sports were soccer and basketball. I had it split throughout the year where soccer was fall and spring, and basketball took up all winter and all summer. And that was just my life. I was always doing some sport throughout the year, and I rotated between those two. I always liked that mix, to be honest with you, because soccer was a little more fluid. It was a little slower pace. It was kind of like an endurance sport. And basketball, on the other hand, was quick. It was fast paced up and down the court. It was more like a sprint. So I always loved the way they contrasted against each other, which made it fun. It always kept me interested because I would go from soccer to basketball season and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, from talking to different coaches and players and friends, it seems like the players that play soccer and basketball, it seems like it's a really good, sports that you can cross-train and do multiple sports, but one helps the other. I always knew, like, when my kids were growing up, when they were in soccer season almost made them better for basketball. And then when they played basketball, it would get them better for soccer. And it was just enough of a break, just enough of a different sport, a different type of objective, still team otherwise, but, it just got going and kept them motivated.
What I always liked when I got to high school, I was playing both at Holy Cross. We would get done soccer with just enough time to have a little break before basketball started. And it was always the day after Thanksgiving then. But I still was in shape from soccer. So I had enough time to kind of rest and recover, but I was always ready to roll for basketball. And I think, honestly, playing soccer in the fall helped me out with my conditioning and playing basketball in high school.
Yeah, definitely. So what made you attend Holy Cross?
So when I was living in Edgewater Park, we actually moved to Mount Laurel. So I actually could have attended Lenape, but we moved the summer of my 8th grade year. And I already had friends going to Holy Cross. I had teammates going to Holy Cross. And I just kind of followed with my friend group and people I knew were going to play sports. So I went to Holy Cross. Even commuting from Mount Laurel, I felt like it was the best fit for me. And I enjoyed all my experiences at Holy Cross. It was a smaller school, much smaller school than Lenape, but I enjoyed being able to get involved in everything. I did sports, I did extracurriculars like student council, things like that. I just wanted to be around other people at school. I liked being involved in everything, and Holy Cross seemed like the best place to do that for me.
Yeah, that's great. So it seems like you were really into sports and you loved competition. What did you end up doing when you got to high school as far as playing sports for school?
So I played soccer and basketball at Holy Cross. I played for Barry Harper at Holy Cross, and they were always very interesting experiences. We were good. I wouldn't say we were great. We were always competitive, but you have all those rivalries up and down the so-called river line there, and we would battle with Willingboro, Burlington Township, Burlington City, and it was fun because they were all kind of local. You know, like Delran, Morristown, they were local games for us, and you would have players on the team. I'd have teammates that were from all these other towns, so they would know each other. We would always know people when we were playing them. And I thought that was a fun experience. When I got a little bit older at Holy Cross, like my junior year, I really wanted to play soccer in college. That was kind of my goal. And I knew I didn't have the size or the speed or the shot, quite frankly, to play basketball in college. So I focused on soccer for college, and I had a couple schools show a little bit of interest, some smaller D3 schools. And one coach said to me, you either need to gain 20 pounds or be the fastest kid on my team. So I started running track to become the fastest kid on the team. And then all of a sudden, college track coaches were calling me because of the times I was hitting. And that was kind of the path I followed through Holy Cross. I ended up going to St. Joe's to run track and cross country, even though that was never part of the plan. That just seemed to be the sport that carried me through. And just like I said at the beginning, I love all sports just because I love to compete. And so track became another form of competition for me. And that's kind of what got me into a good university and a great program. And so sports drove me all through high school and got me into college, and gave me a good education through the way.
Wow, that's great. So what events did you do in track?
I was more of like a middle distance guy. I ran the 800 and the mile. We had to run cross country in college, which was not pleasant at all ever. But I enjoyed the 800 and the mile. I thought that was more fit, more suited my endurance and my speed mix. So that's what I ended up focusing on.
So where did you go to college, and can you talk about your college experience?
Yeah, so I went to St. Joe's out in Philly, and I went to run track and cross country, and I spent my first 2 years there running 3 seasons, because we would run cross country in the fall, indoor track in the winter, then outdoor track in the spring. And it was tiring, I'll tell you that much. You put in a lot of mileage. Your training was very regimented. There was a lot of strict routines that we followed as a team in terms of nutrition and training, weight training, things like that. But the best part was I was there during the years the St. Joe's went undefeated. And that was when Jameer Nelson and Delonte West were there. And I got into every home game I could. That was my junior year. So I got into every game. And I'll just tell you, that was, when I look back at college, track will always be a part of it because it was grueling and demanding. But seeing St. Joe's kind of at the peak of its basketball program, that was something else. It's hard to describe, the feelings you would get when you would get into a gym like that, when we were fighting to be nationally ranked, we were fighting for a #1 seed. Just the atmosphere around campus was unreal.
So what was your most memorable game you attended when you were at St. Joe's? Because I remember, so when I didn't mention this before, but my sister went to St. Joe's, and
Okay.
she was going to St. Joe's. She was a part of the dance team. So,
Oh, really?
So we went to a lot of basketball games just to see my sister. So it kind of like, fell into place there. But it was just fun. I mean, the gym was small, but still big enough to get a lot of people. Just energy in there. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I liked about it the most. It was a small gym, but my most memorable game was when we played Xavier at home, and I want to say double overtime, but I think it might have just been 1 overtime. And that game, that was the game people said we were going to lose. Xavier still had David West, and they kept saying that when St. Joe's going to lose. And I remember that game, like you couldn't hear a thing. When we got fourth near the end of the game, just the atmosphere, you could feel it. I don't know a better way to describe it, but anybody who's been to a big time game like that understands. It was deafening. It was so loud. I don't know how the players heard anything Martelli said. They might not even been listening to anything Martelli said, but that atmosphere was just crazy. It's like addictive when you're when you're an athlete, when you're into sports, being in that kind of environment, it just fuels you. It was so much fun.
Yeah, definitely. You create a lot of memories. You have a lot of fun. I mean, obviously, the end game is the degree that you get. So,
Sure.
what did you study in school, and why did you pursue that major?
So I originally went in to study psychology, and to be honest with you, I knew I wanted to work at something in education. Both my parents were educators. My dad was a principal for a very long time. My mom was in education. So I don't know, maybe it was always in my blood, but I knew I was going to kind of be directed towards education. And when I was at St. Joe's, I started to work some programs at St. Joe's, but also here at home in Medford Township, where I would work with students and athletes with special needs. And we would do some activities at school where we did days where we just closed the campus down, and younger students from the Philadelphia area would come out with special needs, and we would do like a field day, and we would do like soccer games and basketball games and little competitions. And those started to become my favorite parts of the day, my favorite things to do. And when I was working at home in Medford Township, we would run camps and leagues for, again, students with special needs. I just fell in love with that became another one of my passions. It wasn't just sports anymore. It was this bigger picture of helping a student who has some kind of needs and working with these younger students. I kind of realized that's what I like to do. And I'm very outgoing, I'm very goofy, I'm very animated. And it just felt like a natural match. So that was a path I decided to follow. And when I graduated St. Joe's, I actually went to college in New Jersey to get my master's in special education. And from there, the rest is history. I started teaching in a middle school. And then after 7 years in a middle school, moved to Lenape.
Wow, that's great. You kind of just got me thinking. I love your passion, and it's funny because I studied psychology in college, and
right.
One of the reasons why I studied psychology is I was actually originally going to be, I was a chemistry major, and I don't know why I picked chemistry. I didn't really like science.
I'm not smart enough for chemistry.
I think it sounded cool.
Yeah.
I had these friends, and one of the friends is like, and there were a couple of the girls are like, hey, you got to come down and play volleyball. So I go to the gym and we to go play volleyball. And when I got there, it was Special Olympics.
Oh, nice.
So they're like, hey, we're going to play volleyball. And I said, okay, cool. So I volunteered for Special Olympics for a couple of years, and then I ended up transferring home. But I've always had a passion. I mean, I think it would be a really good idea maybe in the summertime, if we can figure out, maybe get some of the girls in the Lenape Regional School District and put together like a clinic.
Yeah.
In the area, like if you'd want to do it, I would love to do it with you.
I'm in. Like I'll always be on board for something like that. Yeah. And I have a couple girls this year already. So my seniors, my senior captains, Deanna West and Olivia Johnstone, we've already talked about doing some things with younger students in the community and helping out with students with special needs and trying to get them involved. Obviously, we're dealing with much bigger things right now, so it's restrictions on who's allowed in the gym and how many people are allowed in certain spaces. But as soon as we could kind of get past that, I'm in. I'll be happy to work on something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I think Freedom Park would be perfect if we do it outside.
Yeah, that's where we used to work the programs with Medford Township. We would have everything at Freedom Park.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think that's going to be our 2-year plan. So within the next 2 years,
I love it.
At least like once or twice, and then we'll see what happens. But I think it would be awesome. I would love to do that. Oh man.
Yeah, I'm in.
Excited. Well, let's go into some coaching. So you talked about how you became a teacher and ultimately got into special ed. And then you end up, working in middle school, but then going to high school. So how did you get involved with coaching?
So when I was in the middle school, I worked at it's called Olsen Middle School, and it's literally right behind Seneca High School. So it's one of the feeders for Seneca, and it's a small little school. While I was at Olsen, there was an opening for boys basketball position, and at the same time there was an opening for the girls basketball position, and I put in to be the boys head coach. And the principal came up to me and said, I'll give you the boys job if you'll also take the girls job. I thought it sounded fun at the time. I mean, I was 23 years old. And so coaching two teams in basketball was fine with me. And because we were a small school, we had one gym, one practiced before the other, one played right before the other. And it had happened at that school in the past where one coach ran both programs. So I started coaching both at a younger age. And I realized pretty quickly, I really enjoyed coaching the girls' side more. And it was little things. I mean, the girls would buy in to some of the like cheesy little things I wanted to do at practice, like the team building and the games and the little competitions. And once they bought into something like that, now all of a sudden you have a group of girls that wants to work together. They will run through a wall for each other. They'll run through a wall for you. And I started to love that camaraderie, that feeling that the girls created. And I almost felt like the boys, and it could have just been some of the boys I felt like the boys shied away from that they were more in it like almost at a personal level, and where the girls always bought into this team feel, this team vibe. And I remember thinking very quickly, I never put in for the girls' job. It was never really something I thought about, but I don't want to coach boys anymore. I wanted to stick with girls basketball. So at the same time, I was working in the middle school. Sean McAneny reached out to me as, essentially one of the feeder programs to Seneca, and we started working together. So we did some summer camps and clinics for the young girls in the area. But then he also had me start to work at he was hosting the high school summer league at the time. So I got to be around more of his high school teams and his high school programs. And we just started to work more and more over the course of the next 6-7 years. We just started to work together more frequently. And I was lucky to develop that kind of friendship with Sean, because when I got hired at Lenape, he introduced me to Rob Hummel and basically said to Rob, like, you got to bring this guy on just because he's been around girls basketball and he'll do everything for you. And it was the greatest thing for me, because the rest is history. I've worked with Rob for 7 years, and now I'm sitting here in this position, ultimately because Sean McAneny let me work with him in his programs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're learning on these podcasts, is the connections that you make.
Yeah, definitely.
You start like, maybe a few years down the road, and then later it, blossoms into something else and gives you more opportunities. So I'm hoping that more girls that are in South Jersey, and our coaches as well, that the opportunities are going to open up for them as they come back after graduating college, pursuing their degrees, getting into their fields. For the ones that want to get into coaching, that they'll have an opportunity, just like you've been given, to work with the different teams.
Well, that's what I think is so interesting and so cool about what you're doing is you create this community. There really is a bigger picture. There really is a bigger community of girls basketball, especially in our area. And there's a lot of pride in each of these schools and each of these programs. And there's a lot of very interesting history, not just with rivalries between the schools, but also with how much they've accomplished and what these girls have gone on to do after leaving a Lenape, a Cherokee, a Shawnee, or a Haddonfield even. And it's just, it's fun for me to now be a part of that, because I've looked up to it and I've been like an assistant for so long that now this is fun for me.
Yeah, definitely. So,
yeah.
You were assistant, for what you said, about 7 years?
Yeah, I worked with Rob for 7 years. I was a volunteer for my first 2 or 3 years, then a freshman coach, then JV coach for a couple of years. And when Rob started talking about stepping down last year, I knew this was something I wanted to pursue. And I felt like I was in a really good position for it, because I had already been in the program. I had already known some of these girls. I'd been involved with some of our youth camps already. So I knew some of the other people coming up. And I just felt like, this is not an opportunity I could miss. And so I went for it, and I, was lucky enough to be named the new head coach.
That's fantastic. So
thank you.
In your opinion, what's the difference, or I guess there are differences, obviously, but what are some big differences between being an assistant coach at a school that you're at now to being the head coach? Obviously responsibilities, but what's the difference this year?
Well, I'll tell you, we'll be able to answer that question more completely next year, because this year everything's different. Everything, we're very flexible. We're very patient. this is not a normal year. And I think every coach will say that. And I think every coach realizes that. The biggest thing for me from being an assistant to now being the head coach is your decisions mean a lot more. You know, your ability to call timeout, your ability to draw up a play, you reading the game from the sideline, because me yelling something down the sideline to Rob doesn't hold the same amount of weight as now I'm standing up making that decision. And the outcome, the girls responding to you or the girls relying on your decisions now has that much more weight tied to it as well. But in terms of a program, this year's just different. It's in its own little shell. I don't know how to compare it yet. I will be able to give you a more complete answer after I live through a more quote unquote normal year.
Well, I have a question for you. So, you know, you said that you would give input, obviously, to the head coach, which was Rob Hummel,
right,
in the past. How much do you rely on your assistant coaches now as a head coach, knowing that you were in that position before?
I was there, yeah.
You have extra eyes seeing the court, talking to the girls, and getting maybe a different picture than when you're getting. Because I think when you're head coach, you're kind of focused on everything that's like on the court. And sometimes, like, you know, maybe you don't notice, you know, little tiny things here and there, or especially if, you know, what's going on with the bench. So I'm sure you have some help. So how much do you rely on your assistants to help you?
Well, I think the biggest thing with my assistants, first off, I have a varsity assistant, Kristen Bucci, who is great with X's and O's. She sees everything well. I think we agree a lot on the kind of offense or the style of defense we should play. So I always know what she's looking at because we do a lot of the preparation beforehand. And then the other assistant, our JV coach, Eric Einbinder, he's a ball of energy, and he does all this background work. He does all the leg work. So I rely on those two more in the preparation for a game. You know, what did you see on film? What did we look like last time? What did our opponent look like on film? And how do we match up? How do we exploit their weaknesses or you know, maximize our strengths? And then in a game where I rely on them is the quick reminder, like, hey, remember we said we were going to run this kind of set. Remember we said we were going to do this on defense, because you're right. You're 100% right. Standing on the sideline, I have on blinders. It's just tunnel vision of what the five girls on the court are doing. But I trust those two behind me, and I rely on those two to kind of say, hey, we practiced this. We prepared for this. Let's go to this new look, or let's try this. And I think that's part of a program. And I hope that the girls see that there's teamwork even amongst the coaches. Because if we're going to try to promote that to the girls, I want to be able to show it and model it. But it all comes from having a good staff, having staff that you trust, and putting in the work together behind the scenes. And I think everybody that works with our program this year goes above and beyond. And I have a phenomenal staff of coaches. I couldn't be happier.
That's fantastic. So how would you describe your coaching philosophy and coaching style? So what kind of
well, what's that?
What kind of coach are you?
I don't know. Time will tell. This year's a hard year to gauge, but I think my philosophy has always kind of been around learning the game and trying to build a relationship, trying to build some trust with the players so that the girls know I have their best interest at heart. And I'm never going to be that kind of coach that's, you know, do this because I said so. And I don't think we have a lot of coaches like that in our area. I think there are a ton of coaches that do a great job breaking down their own plays, their own sets, or their own film, and they teach basketball. And I felt like that was my strength in high school. I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the best shooter, but I felt like I could read the game quickly. I felt like I could learn the game and learn a player's tendencies or learn a team's tendencies. And so I try to do that with our girls. I try to establish some trust between myself and the girls, and that way, when you push them hard, when you're challenging them, when you're trying to make them better, you know, they'll buy into that, and hopefully they respond the right way. Again, you know, time will tell. I think the philosophy this year is all well and good, but there's so much more we're dealing with. And so I try to make sure that there are 5 to 10, 15 minutes of every practice where, like, we're just kind of having fun, even if it's a goofy kind of fun, because honestly, Mike, like, each practice could be our last. Each game could be our last. We've already been quarantined for 10 days, and it came right after the day we lost to Cherokee. So that was a tough 10 days to sit home. And it made me kind of think that it's not just like, what's your coaching philosophy? It was, what's the best thing to do for these girls this year? And how do I make sure they're still having fun while at basketball? So yeah, we try to learn the X's and the O's. And yes, we put in work every day on footwork and spacing and screening and making sure we're all on the same page. But there's also a focus on the fact that, you know, I want them to have fun as teenagers, have fun as teammates. And these are memories they're going to have forever. And I want to make sure that we try to maximize our time together. So, and I guess that was a very long-winded answer of saying, I try to have fun with the girls. I try to be a coach that can relate to the girls, a coach that they feel like they can trust and talk to. But at the same time, basketball should always be fun. There always has to be a component of fun built into each practice for these girls.
Yeah, that's great. So why don't we move into like the team and like the history?
Okay.
So can you tell us a little bit about, you know, the program at Lenape? Because I know there's listeners out there that maybe are from, you know, the extreme South Jersey. I'm talking like
Right.
County, Cumberland County.
Yeah.
We do have friends with from, you know, along the shore area, and maybe they don't know what Lenape is all about. So can you share a little bit of the history?
So I know in my 7 years with the program, we've always had this mentality where it was kind of like championship or bust, for lack of a better phrase. And Rob did an excellent job of laying those expectations out and kind of establishing this work ethic. If you want to get to this level, if you want to be in the championship game, if you want to beat Cherokees and Shawnees and all these bigger schools in our conference and in our group, I mean, it's difficult. It's nearly impossible to do it year after year. But there's always this framework of, you have to be willing to work on the defensive side of things. You have to be willing to communicate and work together, because that's the only way you're going to survive through our schedule, in our conference and in our group. Now, in my 7 years, I think it was my second year, was when we went and won the state championship with Group 4. And we had an extremely talented team. We had Maddie Sims at the forward spot for us. We had a sophomore, Kendall Keys, who could shoot lights out. And then we had Shannon Mulroy as our backup point guard that year, because Amanda McGrogan was our starting point guard. And Shannon went on to be one of the best players in South Jersey and her amazing career. And so the history there was always built on this expectation that we can play at a very high level, but you have to put the work in first, and you have to do all the little things correctly, but you have to do all the little things together, because that's what makes the team better. And that's what ultimately helped us achieve our goal when we beat Patterson Eastside. And then we got back there 2 years ago in Shannon Mulroy's senior year. Unfortunately, we ran into Diamond Miller and Franklin, and that was I've never seen anything like that. So I don't even think I could have made Franklin's team that year. So they were a very talented program. But that expectation and that history has carried through. And I now have girls who had older siblings on those teams. I have girls that have seen these championship games. And I think that's what's so cool about Lenape, is there is this expectation, but there's also these experiences at a high level and in these high intensity games and in these really important games. And that's what's fun about coaching in our area, is with some of these schools. I mean, I wish we could have had fans at our Cherokee game this year, because there was an atmosphere to it in the second half. And that's what's fun in this area. And that's what's fun about our schools: Shawnee, Lenape, Cherokee, Eastern. They all have these great programs. And it's because all the coaches lay out these expectations and lay out the framework for success. But it's also because all these girls buy in and are willing to put in the time to do it and be successful.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the thing. It's just a matter of, you know, coming from the leadership aspect, the coach, and then down, obviously to the captains and then the players. But I mean, Lenape, the year that they lost to Diamond Miller, I don't know if you remember that year, I went to the tournament champions game, and Diamond Miller single-handedly won and basically put the team on their shoulders.
Sure.
And they beat, Saddle River Day. And when they played Saddle River Day had 4 D1 commits on the team that were starters. The 5th one was not a D1 commit. She was only a freshman. It's Sanaya Caldwell now. And I'll never forget, that game was back and forth. And it was like 2 seconds left in the half. Diamond Miller, I think, stepped across half court, hit a 3-pointer. And after that, I'm like, I think they're going to win. We were like so amazed. And they did. They won. They won that game, and they weren't supposed to win, but they won. It was amazing.
I don't know how anybody was supposed to stop her that year. When I saw the beginning of the game, I actually think we scored first. And I joked with Rob, I go, all right, we got them right where we want them. We were up 2-0. I think it was 2 foul shots. And she came down, and she's right in front of the bench. She's arm's length away from me. And she drains a 3-pointer, and it hit nothing but the bottom of the net. And our girl, Nevaeh Sutton, was covering her, and she was one of our best athletes. And she looks over at me, and I said, well, make her do it again. I don't know. And Diamond came down again. She's about an arm's reach away from me. Drains another 3, nothing but net. And I was like, all right, we had a good run. But it was something else watching a girl play at that level. But that's what's cool about our area. We played against some phenomenal competition down here, and we played against St. John Vianney with Kelly Campbell, and she went on to I'm drawing a blank. She went out DePaul. Kelly went out to DePaul, and that was another player I've seen where she would shoot the ball, and she could turn around and start walking back because she knew it was going in. And we played them a couple times the year we won the state championship. And there's always the Terrians. You could talk about even more local than just the short teams. But how amazing is it that these girls have accomplished so much in our area? And that's what's fun, and that's what these programs are built around, these expectations of success, and always making sure that the team buys in and is ready for a championship run each year.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about last year a little bit.
Okay.
Just with the history of the team, and maybe if there was a game that kind of like stood out in your mind that kind of defined the season for Lenape, and then we can talk about maybe this season.
So last year, I think the game that sticks out the most to me was early in our season. We went down to a Christmas tournament at Southern Regional High School, and we were playing Mainland. Okay. And I remember some of our seniors, Regan King and Kiana Gosnell, and they just their focus was, we're playing Kylie Watson. And we had talked about in practice leading up to it, if you 5 play together, you could take on Kylie Watson. And they had hyped her up. They're looking up her stats, and they're looking up, well, she's going to Oregon and she's got all this going for her. But it motivated them to make sure they were on the same page with everything. And that was one of those games where everything kind of clicked for us. And we opened up the game with a couple of threes, and we made sure we were pressuring her on defense to the point we kind of took them out of their rhythm. And then as we start to feel more comfortable and confident in our offense, and we start to frustrate them in their offense, you could see the girls start to play at this level. Their own confidence was growing. And that was so much fun to watch. That wasn't X's and O's. It was the girls stepping up and the girls doing all the little things and like those hustle plays and those gritty little plays, diving on the floor, getting loose balls. Like, they took a lot of pride in that game. And that was just so much fun to watch. And in reality, when you look at it, that was probably the game where I had the least say or the least amount of impact, but it was so much fun to watch because of the girls and the way they felt about it.
Yeah. So if there's any listeners that are wondering, Cherokee played Mainland a couple weeks later. On the first offensive play that Cherokee had the ball, Kylie Watson had 3 blocked shots. 3 blocked shots. She blocked one, we got the ball back. She blocked another one, we got the ball back. She blocked the third one, we got the ball back. And I'm going, oh my gosh, this is going to be crazy the whole game. She was a dominant player. Like, dominant.
She was a phenomenal player. Phenomenal.
And then the funny thing about that game, she actually broke the girls' high school record at Mainland for points. The game.
Oh, yeah.
against
remember
Cherokee.
seeing
So it's
that.
cool because you're a part of these historical moments in South Jersey now. Like,
Yeah.
as a fan, because now my daughter's playing, I'm like, wow. So I'm really getting a chance to learn more, but I'm really just getting an appreciation, for the basketball and the players and just the quality that we have. The quality is just
Yeah,
amazing.
of course.
So, talk about last year, we talked about the mainland. Go to the end of the season, and then obviously, things get shut down. And then I guess there's a transition in, I guess, coaching at Lenape.
Yeah.
How did that transition happen, or when did it happen, and how did you know that you were going to become coach?
So we played the first weekend in March was when we lost to Shawnee.
Okay.
And that was a phenomenal game. That was a frustrating game for us, but I thought Chrissy McGovern and Shawnee, they had a phenomenal game plan. They made adjustments that just we weren't able to deal with. And I thought at the end it was frustrating, and all of a sudden everything was getting shut down. It wasn't just us. I mean, Cherokee and Shawnee played.
Right.
And I remember we debated like going to the game or not going to the game. And I just followed on Twitter because it was probably too sore to go watch. But then you see Cherokee keep advancing, and we kept hearing about what was coming and what might be happening. And the school gets shut down March 13th or March 12th. It was
March
one of our
13th,
last.
Friday, I'll never forget it. March 13th.
Yeah, so our last day, we were home, and then Rob and I ended up talking, and he was ready to make it official. And so I knew he was going to resign. I knew he was going to step down. And then everything, like one of my introductions to Zoom or Google Meets or whatever you want to call it was my interview. And everything was done online from that point forward. Though I guess the weirdest part of all of this was I interview online. I have a quick follow-up, and then they tell me, but you're not going to be board approved until they know more about the extracurriculars in the off season. So I couldn't really tell anybody for the longest time. And that was the hardest part, is I had just landed like a dream job for me. I was going to be a varsity basketball coach at a Group 4 school in the Olympic Conference. But I can't tell anybody. And it was frustrating, but it was also one of the happiest things that's ever happened. It was a phenomenal experience. So then by the time the summer rolled around, I was allowed to start doing things with returning players. Like wasn't allowed to really have any camps or any off-season stuff, but I was allowed to work with the girls that were already currently playing in the program. So we did some summer sessions, and that's when we started to talk about maybe a shift in terms of the culture and that the work ethic and the expectations were still the same, just new messenger, new style of a couple things. But I don't change the expectations for anything. And I still want the girls to have those high expectations and feel like that we can compete at the highest level. So that all started over the summer. And then obviously the beginning of the school year, things get pushed back and our schedules get moved around. But, we're making the best of it. And so when January rolled around, we were ready to go. And I kind of got my feet wet January this year and been loving every minute of it ever since.
Yeah, I think you have that advantage. I mean, most new, quote unquote, new coaches to a school wouldn't have the relationship with the players already established. So you would already have the players, the relationship with the players, from your years of being an assistant in the program. So how much of that actually helped you going into the season, knowing that you only have a short window to prepare and then basically be thrown into the frying pan?
Well, I think it was a huge advantage, to be honest with you, Mike. Knowing them, knowing their strengths, knowing what I wanted to work on gave me, I felt like I was prepared coming into the season because I already knew the girls that were there. I knew what I had. I knew what kind of players they were. So I felt like I was very realistic. I felt like it kind of kept me organized. I could make sure my practices were planned out because I knew who was a part of the program prior to this. I knew what kind of team we had, and I knew what we needed to work on if we were going to keep continuing to build towards this higher level. And the best part for me, and the girls may disagree with us, but I think the best part was I already had established some relationships with these girls. I was the JV coach for some of them. I was the assistant for some of them, and I was the guy that would have to break down film with them or build them back up when Rob went through, corrections and different things with them. So I did have a relationship with them, which I felt like gave me a leg up to start. There was no introduction. There was never a time where it was like, "Hi, I'm Sean McAneny. I'm your new head coach." They knew I'm Coach Mac, and it was just the first day with Coach Mac. We never talked about anything like that. We never had to address, a new program, new things like that. We got right to work. So I do consider myself very lucky that is how everything started with the girls.
Now, how are you adjusting to your new role? I mean, you just said that, you were the person that went through film with them and kind of built up the confidence a little bit. So now you have to be the tough person now. You have to be the bad person now, right?
Have to be bad cop.
Good cop's is the best job, You get to have the most fun. It's a little bit easier. It's a lot less pressure. Yeah. Now you're the head honcho, and you have to lay the law down to your players. How are you adjusting that role?
Well, I always tell the girls, and I started saying this from the beginning, that I'll try to deliver the message with respect, and they know I'm loud, but they know I'm not loud in a mean way. I'm never like yelling at them. I get loud because I'm excited because something's working, or I see the development, I see the growth, and I think once the girls know that that's your style, and once the girls trust you as your coach, then it's okay if you're loud. It's okay if you're the bad cop sometimes, because I also want to be the one to build them back up. So every time I'm the guy who has to bring them back down a notch, or has to make that correction, or has to jump in and say, that's not good enough, I'm also going to make sure I'm the first guy to say, hey, that was good. That was it. I'm seeing it. You're working in the right way. And I like that role as the head coach, where now I'm not the message from behind somebody. Like, it's me delivering the message. So I could be as hard on them as I want, because I think they know it's out of respect and out of a lot of love. I love my girls, but I also think they know that I'll be the one to build them back up and praise them for their success. I'll celebrate them more than they will. I jump around practice and get more hyped up than some of the girls do, but I think that it's important for them to see that when they put in the work and when they've shown the improvement and the growth, that somebody is going to celebrate their development. And that's important for me as a head coach.
So how often or how much do you rely on your relationship with Coach Hummel to bounce ideas back off? Because I mean, that's invaluable, because he knows you in and out. How much do you rely on him as a mentor to kind of give you some advice or kind of direct you a little bit here and there when you're not sure about things or when you have questions?
Well, if you saw my recent calls on my phone, you would know how often we talk, and we talk before and after most games, if not both. And I think what's been good about this year is Rob also knows the girls that are involved. And so we've talked a lot about ideas for sets or ideas for plays. And we talked a lot about development on defense, and kind of where we left off last year. And where he's been really helpful is how do you maximize your practice time when in the past 2 weeks, I've had more games than practices. And it's not it's nobody's fault. There's snow, there's viruses, and then obviously there's much bigger things going on. But Rob's been helpful where, all right, you only have 2 days to prepare for Eustis, then Haddonfield, then Saddle River Day. And when you have 2 days of practice, how do you maximize your time with the girls? And I think he's been a valuable resource for me, where let's try to break this down into something manageable. Let's try to break it down where the girls feel like they can conquer one little skill at a time and master these things. And so it's helpful for me to be able to bounce ideas off of my staff that I have right now, but also the former head coach who was so successful in this program and you get a lot of input from a lot of different people, and I'll take it all in. I mean, that's why I love these podcasts, because I love listening to other people talk about their philosophies and their approach to basketball. I just want to learn everything I can. And that's where using Rob as a resource has been helpful. We don't always deliver the message the same way, but the message is usually the same. And I think that's where it's been helpful, because he knows what kind of coach I am. He knows where we're different in our approaches, but he also knows what our goals are as coaches, and he knows what our goals are for these girls.
Yeah, you have like such an advantage this year. Like you walk in, you have that relationship. I mean, you have a really good youthful team, so you're going to have some grow with you. I know I've heard that some coaches have said they inherited a strong senior class. Well, that helps you for 1 year, and then you have to rebuild again. So next year you're in a better position as your girls go through the program, which is fantastic. So what are like the keys to success this year for your team? So what do you think that your team has to do every game in order to compete and to be successful?
Yeah, I think our biggest thing is always going to be communication on both ends of the floor. I heard John Considine say on here that his girls communicate, but it was at a level, nobody else was hearing. And it made me feel better. I was relieved. I thought we were the only team that was like that. And when we communicate, our defense is much, much better. When we communicate on the offensive side of things, I feel like we move the ball faster. And it's just, for me, it might be some of that high school component. It might just be the age. It might be the comfort level of the girls. But I think when they communicate, that's when you really start to see 5 girls play together as a team. And when we do that, our defense is at a different level. And when we do that, our offense just is much more effective. Our skill set is our shooting. And I think I've been gifted with a lot of shooters. So for me, in terms of X's and O's, I always try to preach spacing and moving the ball, this ball movement. If we can get the ball moving faster than the defense, and you get yourself and your footwork ready, you're going to be open for the shot. And so we do a lot in practice in terms of spacing and using screens, setting up screens. And those are the kind of skill sets that we practice on. That's what we try to master. And that's what we're trying to improve, especially, as you said, with a young team. But, all the skills and all the X's and O's aside, we have to be better at communicating, because when the girls play together, that's when it's harder to stop a team like that, regardless of who's got the most skilled player or who's got the better sets or who runs a better defense. If you are playing together, you can sort things out during a basketball game. You can make adjustments, and trying to get the girls to buy into that has been one of my biggest pushes this year, just to make sure that they communicate and work together, and then we can try to overcome something if it's not working, but we'll do it together.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And I just love that communication. It solves a lot of problems.
It definitely does.
I think that a lot of the problems that we have, as teenagers, as adults, is a lack of communication or miscommunication, especially now with social media and text. Like a lot of times, my wife and I, if you read too much into it, or you don't read it, the right way, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Like I sent a text her today. I said, it only took like a year. And my wife's like, what are you talking about? It didn't take a year. I said, I'm just joking, meaning it took a long time. And she didn't get that I was making a joke of it. And it was just funny to me. And she finally got it. But it was like that I didn't communicate what I was saying in a way that she would understand it, interpret it the same way that I was saying it. So I could have pushed it and made a problem, but luckily it was just a joke and it wasn't a problem. But again, communication is really key.
It's huge, and it's a hard skill to coach. It's a hard skill to teach, but that's why we try to work on it. That's why we try to emphasize it, just to make the girls more comfortable with it.
Yeah, definitely. So we're getting ready to wrap things up, and before I ask the last question, I have to say that Mount Laurel travel basketball, and we talked about this before the program, is probably, in my opinion, is one of the strongest programs in the area. So all these teams that play in the ICBL, I've seen my daughter come up. I've seen my other daughter come up. I've watched between, and then look at what you're producing year in and year out as new players come in,
right?
Seniors graduate. I mean, you constantly have an influx of players, and that's really important. But the question that I want to ask is, how do we grow the game as far as talent and as far as exposure? Like, what can we do together to come as a community on our ends?
So I think our biggest tool now is social media, and I know that's something I have to improve upon. Where you use social media to promote not just your own program, but to promote the girls in the program. And one of the things we tried to do this year, with after each game, just to put out a little tweet, not only emphasizing the leading scorer, but we do something. We hand out a game ball, and what we focus on with the game ball, we have a column on our stat sheet for hustle plays. Anything deemed a hustle play. Girl who got back to tip a pass on defense, girl who dove on the floor, taking a charge, something like that. The little things that don't show up on every stat sheet, but that make a difference in the game. And I think once you start to promote something like that, and if you use social media as your tool for promoting all this, then you keep more athletes and more girls engaged in basketball. Because I don't ever want it to become, well, I'm not as good a shooter as her, or I'm not as good a ball handler as her. Like I want all the players to feel like they can have a role and do have a role, and that will highlight all these different skill sets. And if we could start to do that at the younger age, like you said, Mount Laurel is a phenomenal feeder program. I'm so lucky to be at Lenape and be tied in with Mount Laurel's feeder program. And as soon as we're allowed back to normal again, like I want my girls involved with Mount Laurel. I would like to get involved myself. And just promoting this, just making sure the girls feel like they're celebrated, making sure like their skills are highlighted, not just who scored the most points. That's something that I think is vital in keeping girls interested in basketball. Now, one of the biggest problems, and this could be a whole nother podcast, but you have so many athletes that are just sports specific. And how do you keep all these girls involved in multiple sports? Like I grew up playing multiple sports. I think it made me a better athlete. I think soccer made me a better basketball player, and I think basketball made me a better soccer player. How do you kind of promote that for these younger players and these younger girls? So I think social media is probably one of the most effective tools right now. And I know all of my girls are on there. They want me to do like a TikTok dance or something now. Listen, I don't want to be caught dead on TikTok, but those girls also know I'm kind of a pushover. So you might see me on TikTok sometime soon, Mike. But I think if we could use the social media to promote everything, to promote like who scored the most points, but also who was that player that made a difference just because of work ethic and hustle and heart, because you can't put heart on a stat sheet. And that's the kind of thing I think a lot of coaches in our area do that. This is not just me, but that's the kind of thing that can help grow the game and help more girls feel connected to basketball and hopefully foster that love of basketball, the same that all these coaches have and the same that all these star players have. I also look at the bigger picture where I think the SJIBT is the coolest event. I think it's great that you play something across all groups. You mix your private, your public schools. And when we can get back to that, I'd love to get Lenape more involved in the SJIBT. I love the showcase games. I know Ron Powell was on here talking about his game with St. Rose in that showcase at RV, the Shore versus South Jersey. I think that's phenomenal. The Shore Conference is its own little level there. But I think, South Jersey can kind of hang. And I would love to see that we promote these kind of things and promote that South Jersey can hang with the Shore, as Ron and Cherokee proved last year. So these are all things that we all have a love and an interest in the game. And I hope that if you start to put more and more of that out there, that it becomes, like infectious, that other people are going to buy in and other people are going to want to play at Lenape, because look how much the girls love it and look how hard they work and look how much they're celebrated and congratulated and all the little things. And I know it goes through other programs as well. I just hope that kind of spreads more and more.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, you know. And I think, you know, just anything with community service, like that idea that, you know, I think that we had, I think would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So I'm in for that, obviously.
It's just team building. It's just getting out in the community. But the other thing too is you're building up relationships and also possibly fans. You know,
sure,
like with the youth. I mean, you could be inspiring somebody to want to play the game, but you're also building that connection. And once there's a connection to a player, to a team, then you're going to have more people that want to support the program. So this is just fantastic. This has been a really awesome podcast, and I love the fact that you're just hungry to learn. That you've been, you know, listening to coaches. I mean, one of the hardest things I think is, as a new coach, is trying to form those relationships. You know, because you haven't been a head coach as long as everybody else, so they already know each other. They're already friends. They interact with each other. So for you to try to break in and make those connections where you can work with another team, or you can, you know, strategize, or even just bounce ideas off, or, you know, if you have something that's going on and maybe you wanted to try and see how they handled it to get an idea, you can have those relationships. So this is perfect. I mean, and as you go, it's just going to grow. And I think, these, you know, tradition of winning is going to be there. I mean, you're going to continue it. I mean, the culture is intact, and it's actually still strong. It's not like you're rebuilding from scratch, because you're doing a lot of the same things that the kids already know. So I mean, you're already like light years ahead of the game for any other first-year coach that has to tackle.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? So I guess, you know, you're in the right place at the right time.
I think so.
And it works out great. And I'm just so happy for you. I'm really excited. And I'll tell you, the love that the players have for you is just amazing. You know, like I was actually messaging Kevin King, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Coach Mac, we love Coach Mac." You know, so you got the support.
Thank you. I guess I have to keep her playing then, huh?
What's that?
I said, I guess I have to keep playing her then, huh?
Oh yeah, you got some awesome families over there.
Oh, they're all I love these kids and these families. They're great.
Yeah, they're so great. I mean, last year. Cherokee played Lenape at the very end of the season, and I talked to this older woman. I hope I don't offend her by saying older, but she's not my age; she's my parents' age, so I'll say older. Okay. And we got to be talking, and then 10 minutes later, I found out it was Kevin King's mom. It was Caitlin King's grandma.
Oh no, Caitlin's grandma. Yeah.
You know, I said, oh, you know, I don't know why we started talking, but she was next to me, and we started chit chatting, and she was the nicest woman. You know,
she's one of our biggest fans.
Oh, I bet. So I hope you don't take that the wrong way.
I won't tell her.
I'm an older woman. It's just that, you know, I just wanted to be respectful, and I wanted to let everybody know that she was just a fantastic lady. I saw her in the stand. We were interacting after the game, and she was a wonderful person to talk to. So.
Yeah.
All right, Coach. We're going to end things today, and I just want to say thank you and good luck to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.
Take care.